Welcome. So this week, I want to focus on something a little bit different than I've been focusing on in the last few weeks. And so it's come up a number of times. I'm kind of a little afraid to talk about it, actually, because when I talk about things like this, I get challenged in it. So I do want to talk a little bit about it. It is something that's very important. It's something that's different from what I've been doing normally. So we know that what we say and how we speak is really important. And one of the things that I want to talk about is speech. It does come up in this week's Parsha, and you may go, what do you mean it comes up in this week's Parsha? This is all about making the ephod and the clothing for the Kohen and stuff like that. And yes, you're right. But the Parsha Tetzaveh actually reveals to us that it's actually talking about something that we need to be focusing on every day. He actually uses it in a way similar to the way that sort of Paul talks about the conditions of wearing the helmet of salvation, things along those lines. So he talks about the ephod in a way that's actually incredibly similar to that. And so, and this is talking about it from a context of dealing with speech. And so what I really want to talk about is speech. And so I'll start with something from the book of Yaakov, James, if you guys know that. And so just talking about something that we can take away and think about and implement in our lives. It's sort of more of a halakhic discussion that we're going to have on Parsha Tetzaveh. So starting with the book of Yaakov and relating this Parsha to that Parsha, I'm going to start with the book of Yaakov from our Rebbe's brother. So we all stumble in many ways. If someone does not stumble in speech, he is a perfect man, able to bridle the whole body as well. And if we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we guide their whole body as well. See also the ships, though they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder, wherever the will of the pilot directs. So also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great things. See how small a fire sets on blaze a great forest, sets on blaze a great forest. And the tongue is a fire, the tongue is a world of evil placed among our body parts. It pollutes the whole body and sets on fire the course of life, and is set on fire by Gehenna. For every species of beasts and birds, reptiles, and sea creatures is tamed and has been tamed by mankind, but no human being can tame the tongue, as the restless evil full of deadly poison. From the same mouth comes blessing and cursing, my brothers and sisters. These things should not be. A spring doesn't pour out fresh and bitter water from the same opening, does it? So we want to really focus on speech, and this is something that comes from the Parsha Tetzaveh. Rabbi Yaakov Bakazera. And so I want to talk a little bit about that as well. So he talks on, they shall make the apron of gold, turquoise, purple, scarlet wool, and twisted linen, a weaver's craft. It shall have 2 shoulder straps attached to its 2 ends, and it shall be attached. The work of the belt which is upon it shall be the same workmanship, and shall be made from it. And shall be gold, turquoise, purple, scarlet wool, and twisted linen. The verse here may be viewed as alluding to the mouth, which a person must guard with extreme care. As David HaMelech said, who is the man who desires life, who loves days of seeing good? Guard your tongue from evil and your lips from speaking deceit. Tehillim 34:13-14. This shows us that a person's life depends on his mouth. Likewise, Shlomo HaMelech said, all a man's toil is for his mouth. So we understand that this parsha is he's saying is referring to this idea of talking about the mouth, and it's something that I think we should really take and apply to ourselves as well. Furthermore, all of our sages throughout the generations have warned us to be cautious with our mouth. For example, the Mishnah says, "I found nothing good for one's body except silence, as well as a safeguard for wisdom is silence." Furthermore, our sages say, "If speech is silver, then silence is gold." And there have been many times in my life where I've wanted to say something or teach something, and I thought about it. Oh, I shouldn't really say that. In fact, in the discussions for this week's Parsha, there's some really interesting ideas in this week's Parsha that I thought about sharing with you all that I've found in a few different books, like the Kedushas Levi and the Sefer Zer Shimshon, things along those lines. And my wife was like, no, that's for you to know and for you to think on it. You don't need to pass on to somebody else. And so maybe just be a little bit quiet and talk on something that you can really pass on, that some people can actually take. So it talks in different places. One who speaks with idle chatter in Yoma. You want to speak words of Torah. And so I'm going to skip over a little bit of this and go to the next page and really start talking about this idea of different levels of speech. Because when this idea came to me, and I was learning it in Yoma, actually, with Rabbi Sholem Rosner on aldof.org, something that I would really recommend if you want to study the Talmud, really get into aldof.org. Maybe not Rabbi Sholem Rosner, but that's the one that I really enjoyed learning Talmud from. And so when I was learning in Talmud with Rabbi Rosner through aldof.org, I found something really interesting. And he brought this out to me. And so this is our scroll again, giving sort of this Chotam on the Torah portion. And it says this: there are various levels of permitted speech. One is that a person is allowed to speak in order to conduct business, right? So things that you have to do every day, right? So I deliver packages for Amazon as my my day job, so to speak. And delivering packages, sometimes you have to talk to people, you have to be kind to people, you have to interact with people, you have to talk to your manager. Maybe you have a manager, you have to talk with your manager, you have to talk with other people. That is the first level of speech, right? So it's kind of not really holy, not really forbidden, it's in the middle. Another is speaking words of rebuke and ethical teachings, which is a mitzvah. So it's actually a mitzvah. I was learning this actually last night with some friends of mine in the Talmud, and going into this idea of giving rebuke and receiving rebuke. That is actually a mitzvah that you're supposed to do. And this is another way in which you say words. Now, you have to be very careful when you give rebuke. One, you have to, as the Chovetz Chaim talks about, you have to be making sure that you're giving rebuke in a loving and kind way, and not simply to make yourself feel like a better person. But you also want to be giving rebuke to help that person and for that person to actually receive it. If that person's not going to receive it, again, silence is golden. But if the person is going to receive it, you give something and you say, hey, this is something that I think is really, really important, that you need to know, that you need to correct in your life, or I see this thing that's happening. Again, be very careful in how you do it, but that's the second kind of speech that you have. And it's a mitzvah, so it's a positive thing. Another is speaking words of Torah and of prayer, which is the main reason a person comes into the world. And so right now I'm talking about Torah, and it says in that book of James earlier that there will be people who talk about Torah and teach Torah and prayer, and that is the whole reason you've come into the world. So obviously it's a very good thing to do, but you also want to be very careful when you're doing it. You could lead somebody astray or guide them to a wrong direction. So with all that said, I'm going to talk about Petuch Chotam again. They shall make the apron. The word apron, or ephod, has the numerical value of 85, which is the same as peh, mouth, right? So mouth and apron have the same, and this is where he gets to it. The verse warns a person to guard his mouth properly, to be silent as much as possible, as is hinted in the next word, gold, zahav. This hints to the expression, if speech is silver, then silence is gold. Then you should be quiet sometimes. Turquoise and purple, right? This is also in the building of the Mishkan. The word argamon, turquoise, is an acronym for all the types of speech that we have mentioned as follows. Forbidden, aser, aleph. Permitted, reish, reshut, you have permission, right? It's something that you're permitted to do. Mitzvah is mem. Cut off, nun, nirkat, cut off, right? So the term argamon, which means turquoise and blue, relates to all these different forms of language in which you can say. To elaborate, forbidden refers to idle chatter that one may not speak, as the verse says, you shall speak of them words of Torah and not idle chatter, right? So joking around, saying something that's not really necessary, that doesn't need to be said. Those can all be that kind of forbidden idle chatter. Permitted, something refers to being in order to conduct business. A person is allowed to do this in order to make a livelihood, right? So whatever you have to do in order to be able to sell an apartment or something along those lines. So I was in New York. I spent a very, very short time as a real estate person and trying to rent apartments. And I often found that when I tried to open up my mouth and sell the apartment, it didn't go so well. But sometimes you do have to say hello and things along those lines. And it has a lot to do with the speech for renting out apartments and things like that. So doing business or like I said with Amazon. Learning refers to Torah study, right? So obviously we're learning now. We're learning something from the Parsha as well right now, and something that we can apply to ourselves. And so learning halakha, learning what it means for how to do and properly do Purim and how to properly do Pesach and these kinds of things that are coming up. That's all very good to learn and to teach and to talk about. Mitzvah refers words such as rebuke and ethical teachings, right? And so Yeshua actually engages in this in a few places in Mark and in Matthew. He actually gives some of this tochacha, this rebuke and ethical teachings to teach that, Sinas Chidim was going to eventually have the temple destroyed. And so he actually talks about it in the sense of washing the cup, washing the inside of the cup and the outside of the cup, and how your intentions should match what you say. And that you shouldn't speak if you don't actually believe something. And so this is one of the big things that I always talk about when I talk to people who are interested in what we do as far as a ministry, that your actions should match up with what you actually believe. So if you believe it, do it. If you don't believe it, don't do it. To me, that's the foundation of integrity. Many people have argued that I do not walk in integrity and that I do not do what I say, but I really try to. I really try to have this principle of if I don't believe it, I don't do it. I don't say it. Cut off is what happens to a person who speaks lashon hara and profanity, right? So again, the Chofetz Chaim wrote a whole book, which I think is really, really great, about lashon hara. I would encourage everybody to read it. Our school has published one with Chofetz Chaim's Lashon HaKodesh, I believe it's called, that gives you all the rules for how you're supposed to speak. Great thing to get into. Turquoise purple, the word tekelet. Turquoise may also be read as tachlit, purpose. Thus, the main purpose of one's mouth is to guard it from types of speech that are hinted at in the word argamon, purple. A person should refrain from forbidden speech, and a person should engage in the types of speech that are permitted. Okay? So, knowing all of that, you want to really focus on what you're saying and how you're saying it. One of the really important things is in speech, it's related to the name of God, of Elohim. And so, mouth has a numerical value of 85, or 63 plus 22. The number 63 is a numerical value of Hashem's name, spelled out in full, whereas 22 represents the 22 letters of Aleph 8. Furthermore, the word pay, adding one for the word itself, is a numerical value of 86, which is the name of Elohim. The word lashon, or tongue, has a numerical of 386, which is the same as the Shekinah. This number 386 is also a numerical value of names of Hashem's name Elohim, added to this same name when spelled out in full. So you get 386 there. The word shefa, lips, is a numerical value of 385, which is the same as the Shekinah. And so when you speak and you use your words improperly, you are actually taking Hashem's name in vain, right? You're using your mouth to say something which is not what Hashem wants you to say. Okay. When a person contemplates the 6 names of Hashem that are alluded to in these 3 words, all referring to the mouth, he will tremble in fear and awe and be extremely careful not to blemish these holy names through improper speech. It really is a big deal how you talk to someone, what you say, how you teach, and it can fill you with a certain amount of trembling and fear. So the work of the belt, which is upon it, the word choshev, the work, may also be understood as thought, or makshava, right? This is what we talk about when we talk about makshava, or intention. The thoughts upon which the mouth purity of speech depends must also be pure. A person must not only have pure speech, but one's thoughts must also likewise be pure. Of the same workmanship, the word ma'aseh, workmanship, literally means action. This verse implies that the thoughts in one's heart should be the same as one's external actions. It shall be made from it. Rectification of one's speech depends mainly on the purity of one's thought. As we mentioned, the Torah then repeats the items gold, turquoise, etc. All the intentions we mentioned are dependent on the heart. Through one's heart, one can rectify one's speech, and this is all alluded to in the apron of the Kohen Gadol. Furthermore, perhaps the reason why Aaron merited this apron was because he guarded the sanctity of his mouth. For one, his mouth, peh, has a numerical value of 85, which is the same as ephod, apron. He loved peace and pursued peace, which was expressed and accomplished primarily through his speech. As the verse says, for the lips of the Kohen should safeguard knowledge, and people should seek teachings from his mouth. So you really should see somebody who engages in speech. You want to see how they talk to other people, right? So if you're learning Torah from somebody and their speech just seems very harsh or very critical or very this, that, or the other, you should probably avoid it, right? If I do that, you should probably avoid me. But teaching Torah, you should learn Torah from somebody whose speech is holy and righteous and is kind. I know somebody who I'm very close to, I met with this morning, and I have to say, when he speaks, it's very, very inspiring. It inspires me to control my speech and to have my speech be in line with my actions. And Yeshua himself also teaches very much so that our speech and our actions should be together. They should be echad, if you will, one. They should be united in purpose and in intention. And so your deeds and your speech should be the same. And I hope that Hashem does not test me in this, because I know that I really struggle with this. Just the other day I got very angry at a worker at the Amazon place, and so really focusing on making my speech and my actions correlate what I say I should do, and I think that that's really important to focus on what our Rebbe teaches about speech, and what the Petuk Chotam reveals about speech in this week's Parsha of Tetzaveh. So have a good Shabbos. I hope this was uplifting to you. Hope that we can all focus on our speech from this week's portion. Thank you. Have a good week.